evening and welcome to The Breakdown, brought to you by The Lincoln Project. I am Tara Setmayer. This is the Rick Wilson, and we have a special show for you tonight. A special guest. You guys asked, you've been asking, we are finally delivering. The Steve Schmidt is joining us tonight on the show. He'll be with us in a minute or two, and he'll be hanging out with us for the entirety of the show. He'll be answering your questions with us. So it is Steve Schmidt night tonight on The Breakdown. Rick Wilson and Steve Schmidt together. Look out, folks. I know you're excited to have him. No, we're happy to have Steve, and we'll have a great conversation. So but before we bring Steve in, Rick, what the hell is going on in your home state of Florida? Dude, Florida is always the epicenter of fuckery. Republicans were there this weekend.
It's the gravitational center of all fuckery in America. It is the white-hot volcano of crazy that continues to feed the national narrative that Florida's crazy because it just happens to be true. It's a state where people try to hand feed alligators. It is what it is. And Matt Gaetz, I don't know if you caught the latest great Florida man moment tonight. Marco Rubio said, "Well, Matt Gaetz has been pretty firm in his denunciation. We'll have to wait and see." It's like Profiles in Chicken Shit, part 400.
Absolutely. He tried to pull the Matt Gaetz. What? I don't know anything about it. I don't know enough to comment.
Is he a coffee boy or a volunteer for the campaign? I don't know the name.
Right. Nice try, Marco Rubio. It's your home state. You know what the hell's going on. Stop it. But I don't know. I guess they think that those bullshit answers work. That's why they keep using them. Maybe it works on Fox News, but in the real world, it does not. We know you're full of it. Speaking of full of it, Republicans were down there in Florida this weekend in Palm Beach. The RNC donor retreat. And, it didn't quite go so well. We talked about this last week. We were wondering what would happen. Matt Gaetz gave his little speech in front of the the Trump women's group down at Doral, and it was awful. Every crisis management firm's nightmare. That is the client that you do not want. He did everything wrong. He said everything wrong you could possibly say at that thing. And then you had the donors up at Mar-a-Lago, and Donald Trump went off on a rant, like a 50-minute off-script rant about rehashing his grievances, calling Mitch McConnell a dumb son of a bitch, saying that the election results were bullshit. He went after McConnell's wife. I mean, it was a litany of Trump grievance, and it was reported that the donors were none too happy about that. They were just there was a lot of eye rolling, and that was not the speech that he was supposed to give. I don't know why anybody's surprised, though, at this. Why are they surprised? This is who he is. Yet, they still pledge to him.
And you know what? Everybody else out there in the Republican world looked at that speech and said one of two things. Either they said, "I didn't see it. I don't know about this thing you call television. What? A speech? I haven't heard of that." Or they are treating Donald Trump, in the rank and file MAGA world, as the inevitable and natural, front runner for 2024. And that's where the party really is. A big division in that, which is one of the reasons I'm really excited to have Steve on the board tonight, because we're going to go through a lot of this stuff with you folks about where the politics of the country really stands right now, where we're at, how things look and feel in the country, and what the realities are on the ground. So we're very happy to have Steve back on deck with us tonight.
For sure. So if you want to ask Steve a question, #AskTheBreakdown on Twitter. You know how to reach us. There it is. You can also leave us a voicemail. We do listen to them. Check out our voicemail promo. We don't have it tonight? Oh, that's all right. No worries. But we listen to them. So call us and leave us a voicemail.
We listen to all the voicemails.
We do.
Sometimes they're very exotic.
They are colorful. They are never dull, that's for sure. Let's bring in Steve Schmidt.
All right. Without further ado, my good friend Steve Schmidt.
You're the next contestant on The Breakdown tonight.
Good to see you, Beth.
Hey, man, how are you?
Good, Rick. I do have to say, when Tara asked you, she said, "What is going on?" I thought she was going to say with that shirt, because somewhere a waiter in Bavaria is waking up saying, "Where the fuck is my tablecloth?" And that's what I was thinking about there. It was good to see you both.
Oh boy. And I would suspect that there would be a story involved with that tablecloth in Bavaria, but especially if Rick Wilson was involved with it. How did you get that shirt?
Exactly.
You know, there's actually a funny story with my old boss where he used to talk about how he used to wear this blazer that he was very proud of and how he got it out of a dumpster in Berlin. And when I used to tell him, stop telling people that you're wearing a blazer that you got in a dumpster in Berlin. You're a member of Congress, for goodness sakes. But he was very proud of it. So I'm sure there were lots of stories with
He
how he
probably
came across
wasn't the
it.
worst dressed one.
Uh, Anyone who knows my old boss would probably, argue with. He probably was the worst dressed one. Anytime when Politico first launched, they called us and there was the State of the Union, or was it the Nancy Pelosi swearing in when the Democrats first took Congress back and she was the speaker, and he had on a corduroy jacket. It was awful. It was like something from the 1960s. And they asked me about it. I just said, well, he's bringing corduroy back. He's making it sexy again. And we left it at that. He was a terrible dresser. So not as bad as Rick Wilson's shirt tonight, though. So, Steve, your thoughts on what happened over the weekend at Mar-a-Lago? I mean, we make fun of it, but why we bring this stuff up is because this is the state of the Republican Party. This is who they are choosing to continue to pledge fealty to. This is who these donors are giving money to keep pushing the big lie. And this week we're pushing the 100-day anniversary of January 6th, and they're trying to just whitewash all of this. And we really cannot minimize this. It's just shits and giggles. This is actually serious. This used to be a major party that was, part of our system here, and it's gone completely off the rails. And it's literally like a threat to our democracy now.
Oh, it for sure is. Look, there's so much to unpack, but what this weekend was about was, at the end of the day, was that there's only one crown in any kingdom. And Donald Trump is the owner of the crown, not Mitch McConnell. It's Donald Trump's party. And so Mitch McConnell rightly blames Donald Trump for the loss of the 2 Senate seats, the loss of the House, the loss of the Senate. And he desperately knows that the party, his party, can't retake the majority and hold on to it until they're able to reconcile and move on from Trump. But this is a cult of personality. And the cult of personality is built around Trump, who is the forever leader of the movement that he created. In any autocratic movement where you see a right-wing extremist movement with fascistic markers, anytime you see that, you see a fusion of conservatives with extremists in a political coalition. Mitch McConnell thought that he would be the guy who could ride the Trump tiger, that he could play Trump, but it didn't work out like that, as Rick pointed out. Trump played McConnell. And so what we're seeing right now, everything from the boycotts of corporate America saying we can't give you money, all tied back to what happened on January 6th. And this is the fundamental place where we have to linger for a moment of national remembrance and memory and not let go of. And what I'm most worried about for our country, and the question I keep asking myself is, can a democratic nation without the capacity for memory survive? Here's what happened in America less than 100 days ago. We predicted at the Lincoln Project before Trump lost that, one, he would lose, but two, that he would refuse to concede the election. We also said that that would be profoundly dangerous because American democracy is built on a foundation of faith and belief in the fairness of the system. And like the Exxon Valdez spilled oil into Prince William Sound, or the BP Horizon spilled oil into the Gulf, Donald Trump spilled with his lies oil into America's democracy, poisoning it with his lying. And over a period of months, faith and belief collapsed until more than 80% of Republicans say the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And then on the 6th, it all turned to violence and murder when a mob assembled of political extremists who 100 years ago would have been wearing brown in Germany and black in Italy, were incited to murder. They attacked the Capitol. They tore down the American flag. They killed 5 people. They raised the MAGA flag. Speaking of the Black Lives Matter protesters, something we do not talk enough about, they shit all over the hallways. They pissed all over the marble floors. They desecrated the sacred temple of American democracy. And when they were done, the Congress reconvened after the Capitol was restored. And here's what happened next. On the basis of the lie, 147 members of the Republican Party rose, all white, all Republicans, to throw out the results of elections certified in the states on the basis of the lie. What was the lie? The lie was that millions of Black people, as they do in the inner cities, illegitimately voted, and those votes needed to go. Now, the reality, what they voted for was to make the loser the winner. But let's understand the intent. What would have happened if they succeeded in doing that? The American Republic would have fallen. That's why we rightly say they are a threat to democracy. What followed that was the introduction around the country of hundreds of pieces of legislation to restrict voting rights. The Democrats have not been great on this because they have mischaracterized what's in the bill and now in the law. What matters here most is the intent. The intent is to make it harder for Black people to vote. The law is on the basis of the lie. And in the end, what this law really does is it gives state legislatures a veto over Black votes.
That's right. And I think it's important, Steve, for our audience to see and be reminded of what that Trump big lie was as a compilation, because this cannot be understated. This week, the Lincoln Project is releasing a series of videos and ads to remind folks how we got here. Here's the latest that we released today. Take a look.
This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The only way we're going to lose this election is if the election is rigged. I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. The only way they can take this election away from us is if this is a rigged election. This is the greatest scam in the history of politics.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to say it.
Will you commit here today for a peaceful transferal of power after the election?
Get rid of the ballots and you'll have a very there won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The election is being rigged, but we are going to stop it. We're going to beat the rigged system. We're going to beat the rigged election. We are not going to back down.
I mean, see,
that
that really
still gives
is one
me
of the
chills.
things that it really is one of the things, though, that we both predicted and then witnessed was he would tell the big lie, his propagandists would echo the big lie, his acolytes in Congress would echo the big lie, and then on the 6th, they had planted a field. They had set all the seeds in the field, and on January the 6th, it blossomed into this attempt at overthrowing an election in the short term and our democracy in the long term.
Absolutely, right? And if they succeeded in accomplishing what they voted for on the 6th, the republic would have fallen. Now, so let's just put a pin in where we are on January 7th, right? We've had an attempt to install the loser incited by the senior political leadership of the country, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, the president of the United States, the vice president, with his lying, put himself in mortal danger with his support and suborning it, right? On January 7th, right, what ended in this country, which had began in 1797, was the greatest invention in the history of the country, the greatest American export, which is the idea of the peaceful transition of power. That ended in 2021 because of Donald Trump's. And so we live now in an era, because it looks like the accountability for the insurrection is going to be bottomed down. It'll be the rioters, not the incitees. There'll be no consequence for Ted Cruz, for Josh Hawley. Forget and move on. The new chairwoman of the Chamber of Commerce saying that vote, which establishes a new type of Jim Crow in the country, should not be looked at singularly, that it is not disproportionately a significantly different type of vote, but it is. And here's where we come now on January 7th. Republicans have a big problem. Langford in Oklahoma understood this because he represents North Tulsa, the site of the deadliest race riots and murders in the country. And that constituency understood exactly what that vote was and what it was about. And so corporate America, every company has Black employees, and every company has Black customers and Black shareholders. And every one of those companies has taken a position on racial justice issues. Every one of them. They've spoken out about Breonna Taylor. They've spoken out about Mr. Floyd. They've supported the goals of Black Lives Matter. And now they have a problem. And Mitch McConnell's got a problem. And we can talk for a minute about the mistake that Mitch McConnell made when he threatened corporate America. Mitch McConnell is careful. He is methodical. He's precise. The Senate world he lives in is relatively small. He knows its rules. It's a predictable, rhythmic business. Nothing particularly surprising happens. But let's understand where the money's coming from. And all wars are fought over one of three things. And make no mistake, McConnell and Trump are at war. And there will be a winner in this war. We're going to watch it to play out. And it's going to be delicious for us to be able to help stoke it. But wars are fought over religion, over ideology, or over resources. So Kevin McCarthy understood this. He went down to Mar-a-Lago immediately kissing Trump's ass. So think of the pipeline that funds Kevin McCarthy as the red pipeline. Small dollar donors. And the House Republicans on their latest financial report have lit it up. They have done a great job. They are all in for Trump. Mitch McConnell, that's the green pipeline. That's corporate America's money. And he's got a problem because the funders, like the Arabs did in 1973, have launched a boycott. And he's made a threat. And that threat, though, undermines his 40 years of statements about the primacy of the First Amendment. It's inherently fascistic and a rejection of every free market principle that there is.
Absolutely.
But Mitch McConnell, more than anything else in this moment, made the threat, made a rare mistake because he's disoriented and confused. Because for him, politics is a transaction. You give a little to get a little. So his top guy $47 million ran through his company. And his company is
Josh
what they
Holmes.
call in Washington a toll booth firm. So
Yep.
you pay that firm a retainer, and that firm will get you through the back door to McConnell's office to influence legislation without ever having to disclose it. He's
Or
someone who
register as
represents
lobbyists.
foreign.
Yeah.
He's someone who represents foreign countries, right? We have no idea where any of that money goes. But corporate America has said this is a moral issue. So a moral issue, the rarest of things in politics, has come up against a transactional issue. And what's the moral issue? The moral issue goes to the nature and the heart of the country we want to live in. And here's what I believe about it. Unless all of us are free and equal, then none of us are free and equal. I am a white man who is 50 years old. I have 5 kids, 2 stepkids, 3 kids, 3 daughters in the mix, 2 boys. I don't want any of my kids growing up in a country where I have to explain to them why black people are treated unequally and don't get a say. I don't want them in that country. But now, that's the question that this autocratic movement has put forward for us. And now, we see the next metastasis of it in the cancer of Tucker Carlson's overt embrace of white supremacist racial replacement theory, which is rooted in the racial theories of the late 1890s that established the idea of Aryanism, that ultimately became the doctrine for Nazi racial theory. But I want to talk in a minute about why that's so dangerous. But before we start, let's just reset something, where we are in this moment. In this moment, the overwhelming majority of Republican voters believe the legitimate winner of the fairest election in American history is an illegitimate president who stole the election because millions of black people poured out of somewhere in the middle of the night, illegitimately voted, where the shady cities run by the black people delivered the fraudulent votes, making the loser the winner. So a majority of the people in the Republican Party believe they live in an occupied country. They believe they live under an occupation. They're illegitimate. And once you take legitimacy away, and people you disagree with become your enemies, politics becomes zero sum. And when politics becomes zero sum, that's when you're on the edge of violence. That's
you get January 6th.
January 6th. And now we see the next piece of this coming into place. And I just throw it over to you, Rick, which, we've spent a lot of time talking about exactly what this Tucker Carlson stuff is. And nobody in this country should misunderstand the danger of what he's doing.
And, Steve, you're so right. And, with the news this week that even though he's under pressure from the ADL and many other groups and many other individuals, Lachlan Murdoch is, Lachlan's not going to play the Rupert sort of like Crocodile Dundee bullshit game. He's a guy who has now committed himself to this very ideological position at their network that is telling millions of Americans every night that white replacement theory is a legitimate part of the American political discourse. Tara, don't we have a clip of Tucker for tonight? Let's roll that up.
Yes, we do. So people know what we're talking about. Let's roll the clip.
I know that the left and all the little gatekeepers on Twitter become literally hysterical if you use the term replacement, if you suggest that the Democratic Party is trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots, with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. But they become hysterical because that's what's happening, actually. Let's just say it, that's true. If this was happening in your house, if you were in 6th grade, for example, and without telling you, your parents adopted a bunch of new siblings and gave them brand new bikes and let them stay up later and help them with their homework and gave them twice the allowance that they gave you, you would say to your siblings, I think we're being replaced by kids that our parents love more. And it would be kind of hard to argue against you because look at the evidence. So this matters on a bunch of different levels, but on the most basic level, it's a voting rights question. In a democracy, one person equals one vote. If you change the population, you dilute the political power of the people who live there. So every time they import a new voter, I become disenfranchised as a current voter. So I don't understand why we don't understand this. I mean, everyone wants to make a racial issue out of it. Ooh, the white replacement theory. No. This is a voting rights question. I have less political power because they're importing a brand new electorate. Why should I sit back and take that? The power that I have as an American guaranteed at birth is one man, one vote, and they're diluting it. No, they're not allowed to do that. Why are we putting up with this?
Look.
The face of
Go ahead, Steve.
The face of white supremacy, fascism in this country can be handsome, can be smooth, it can seem friendly. That is poison. And I want to walk through all of the aspects of it. Let's start on his voting rights question, and let's understand the history of the country. I believe, and I'm locked in on this position, I believe that there is nobility, despite our grievous original sins, in the idea of America. It is a radical idea. We're the only country in the world founded on the power of an idea, which we have moved steadily closer to. That we are all created equal and endowed by a creator with inalienable rights, amongst them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Anybody can be an American. All you have to do is buy into the idea. So, when the country was founded, there were 13 states and 4 million people. Under Tucker Carlson's theory, since the founding of the country, every person has been dilutive, inappropriately, and illegitimately of the original 4 million people that existed in the country at the birth of the United States. Today, we're a nation of 50 states and 350 million people. What Carlson is saying, and he was very clear about the third world, what he's saying is they come to this country and they take from you. Immigration in this country is the story about what they gave, what they built, and what they left behind. And the people who came to this country speaking every language of the world in a nation where every language of the world is still spoken today have built the most powerful nation in the history of the world, that's done more good, that cured more people, freed more people, fed more people than all the other countries of the world from the beginning of time. What Tucker Carlson is saying is that the people come here to take. Now, this is not a new theory. This was the animating theory of the 1930s. There was a group of people that became the scapegoats for all of society's ills in 1920s and 1930s Germany. The Jews. They made up 0.75% of the German population. You say that again. They made up 0.75% of the German population. And yet they were blamed for all of the problems in German society, the hyperinflation, the economy, the lost war. And Donald Trump, from the moment he came down the stairs in Trump Tower, has told us the Mexicans, the other, the rapists, the murderers, the overt racism and the stoking of racial animus and the stigmatizing of the other. This white replacement theory that Tucker Carlson has embraced, rooted in German racial theory of the 1930s, directly, clearly, and unequivocally, is being sold now by the most corrupt company in the United States, News Corp, to the American people. And it will get people killed. Once you believe that you are illegitimately occupied and that the brown people are coming to take, tragedy ensues. And so
Well, Steve,
there's
Steve, you know, we've seen this. We've already seen this, right? We've seen this with the incidents of extremism and domestic terrorism rising in this country against people of color. We're seeing this happen against Asian Americans now. Every other group that has been otherized over the years, and that has been exacerbated by Donald Trump and his rhetoric and the way that Fox has allowed people like Tucker and others to frame this as an us versus them. This is what happens. This is how a civil war was fought. This is how you get the Missouri Compromise when Black folks were only 3/5 of a person. You know, this dehumanizing other people that don't look like you is very, very dangerous. And this was something I think the country was starting to get away from a little bit there. You see with the younger generation, you know, the millennials and others are a lot more open. You see a lot more interracial couples and families. Like we were heading toward a good place. And then you saw Donald Trump and then Republicans triple down on racial resentment in ways that I, even as an interracial person of color, brought up by a white mother with German and Italian roots in, you know, blue collar North Jersey, even I underestimated the amount of racial animus that was behind what happened in 2010 with the rise of the Tea Party. You know, I was naive enough to think that a lot of the objections to Barack Obama were about policy, because for me it was. But there was an element, underbelly, a very ugly racial underbelly that was there that carried over and was mainstreamed with Donald Trump. And we're seeing this now. You would never hear what Tucker Carlson said on mainstream national television on a cable news network. You would never hear that years ago, even 4 or 5 years ago. You wouldn't hear that. That's something you would find on, you know, Alex Jones or The Fringes, but it's mainstream now.
Because there's a reason for that. And you just talked, Tara, about Trump and the things that Trump has done and the escalating violence in this country by the otherization. Let's put a pin in that for a second, because I don't know where that story ends or how that story ends. I do know that the theory that Tucker Carlson is peddling on Fox News is not a new theory.
That's right.
In our history, right, the theory, right, essentially was born in the late 1890s, right? And it's rooted in the idea of the Aryan, the white, as the master race, and the idea that all of the problems are caused by the other, and there's not enough resources for us all to be together. We need to expand and subjugate them before they subjugate us. And so from 1897, when the first books that become, right, doctrinally more and more important as these toxic ideologies take hold, how does the story end? The story ended in humanity's greatest tragedy. It ended in a war that killed
Holocaust.
100 million people between 1939 and 1945. And so I just said something to my kids when they asked me, what do you think about Prince Philip? And what I said to them was, it shows you how profoundly the world can change in the span of one human lifetime. Those events not only happened within the span of his human lifetime, like his wife, the Queen, he was a participant in them. So it is essential that this country and its citizenship understand the ending of that story, the magnitude of the tragedy, on the basis of what Tucker Carlson is peddling now with an indeterminate ending. All I know is how profoundly dangerous it is. And it is a grave threat to the democracy of the country. It is deeply un-American, and it is an assault and an attack on our national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. We are one people, the American people, not on the basis of the color of our skin or a shared religious faith, but our fidelity to the idea of freedom enshrined in our Declaration of Independence, in our Constitution, that has been handed down to us through 14 generations of blood sacrifice. That is why the Lincoln Project is in this fight against these extremist, anti-democratic elements. And make no mistake, Donald Trump is not just the front runner for the 2024 Republican nomination. He is the presumptive nominee.
Sure.
Until
Absolutely.
he tells us clearly, directly, and unequivocally he doesn't want it, but he does, because it is his candidacy that most immunizes him from criminal prosecution and protects him. We have a closely divided country. This autocratic threat and its new cancerous metastasis with Tucker Carlson's rhetoric should be something that profoundly worries everybody. Should be frightened by it. We have a battle and a fight ahead, and I can't tell you tonight what the outcome is. But if we lose it, we lose American democracy.
You know, Steve, there's one, you and I were talking about this earlier today. There is this aligning of Trumpist ideology now that's growing in Washington. They're forming their own think tanks, their own legal foundations. They're doing their own media. And, you know, you and I have talked a lot in the last weeks about, you know, Richard Evans and the coming of, you know, how Germany became the monstrous state it became, you know, from the period of 1933 to 1939, a 6-year window. And all the things that happened there, the otherization of the Jews, the idea of a state-controlled media, the Gleichschaltung of the media, where everything had to line up with party ideology. And now, I mean, we see a party that has to line up with Trump. Even now, even though some of them try to pretend it's not happening or that he's not going to run, you saw Nikki Haley yesterday act like somebody had hit her with a stun gun when they asked her, are you going to run if Donald Trump runs? And she looked like she wanted to sink into the earth. He controls this party top to bottom. It's not Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell's going around Washington. And his guy, Josh Holmes, who you mentioned earlier, he talks a ton of shit about Trump. Oh, we're going to get rid of that. It's in the past. We're going to have a working class party without Trump. Well, Donald Trump has other ideas. And as we were talking about, you know, Mitch McConnell thought he would play Donald Trump. He's played a lot of people over time. But it's going to be Trump in the end who plays McConnell, because Trump wants that power, and he understands that unifying the party behind him with his personal power over life and death. Like McConnell and Josh Holmes want to pick the candidates for 2022. Who do you think is going to pick the candidates for 2022?
It's going to be
Donald
Trump. Right, because Mitch McConnell's power was being in power. Mitch McConnell, not as Senate Majority Leader, has no power anymore in Washington. And you think that those senators and Trump and the Trump era of people don't smell blood in the water? Of course they do. And so do you honestly think that you think Mitch McConnell's still going to be Senate Majority Leader? He'll have the fight of his life if they get the Senate back, because it's this close. People don't realize how close. I mean, the Senate is 50-50. The House is only a few seats difference. 2022 is crucial to make sure Republicans don't get back into power, because the Republicans that get back into power are the Trump Republicans. So we're going to go right back then to now these people, as scary as it's become, since the ideology hasn't moderated, it's gotten worse. Now we're openly talking about white replacement theory, for goodness sakes. These people will now be in power again if we let that happen. We cannot let that happen. The stakes are too high for that. You know, to Steve's point, there were other things in America going on with this white replacement theory that led to tragedies against minority communities, particularly the Black community. Let's not forget eugenics, Margaret Sanger, sterilizing, young Black women. That's how Planned Parenthood started. Don't get my Democratic friends all up in arms about Planned Parenthood, but that's how it started. Google Margaret Sanger, you'll be horrified. Okay, she was no hero. She believed in eugenics and targeted minorities because they thought they were the weaker race. So this is something that has, is coming back full circle, a very ugly side of this country that was being pushed to the fringes. Back in the 60s, when the John Birch Society was trying to creep its way into the Republican Party, at least you had some sensible conservatives like Bill Buckley who said, listen, we can't have this. This is, we're not going to allow this kind of, blatant racism come into the party. Whether they believed it was good or bad, they knew politically it was not the smart thing to do. Besides, it was immoral. Who are those people now? Who are the people who are yelling, stop or thwart history? We are. The Lincoln Project is. The people who support the Lincoln Project. Those out there who are standing up to this malignancy of Trumpism, who are standing up to this authoritarianism, who are standing up to this white replacement theory nonsense. Those are it's our responsibility to do it. Because if we don't, we're one election away from losing our country. One presidential election away. That's how close we are. We are on the brink.
And one of the lessons of the 1930s is to understand everything the Germans did, they did lawfully.
Sure.
They passed law, right? And lawfully and immorally, right? And lawfully and morally are two different things. But we have a real deal extremist, anti-democratic movement that's led by Donald Trump, and he is the leader of it. I think that when you read a lot of the Washington inside political media coverage, I mean, the coverage is delusional. The idea that there is a functioning coalition, that's going to hold together. Now, I'm going to say two things, right, that are contradictory. Right, I think that Republican coalition is going to crack up like the Whigs did because of the January 6th vote. Right, you cannot have every time where you have the type of coalition now at the place where it's crossed, having crossed that Rubicon on the vote to throw out the millions of votes and throw out, the legitimate winner to make the loser the winner. Once you've crossed that line, you can't sit in coalition with anti-democratic people and believe in democracy. I think Liz Cheney's going to find that out, right, over time. And at some point, right,
you're seeing that now, Steve, right?
Like us,
you're seeing that now.
Going to look over, right. And one of the things we talked about before the election, right, what was going to happen? This is the Republican Party, when it loses, will shrink. As it shrinks, it will get crazier, hotter, denser, like a star collapsing. But that doesn't mean it can't win an election. Right. And so,
can I just say something really quick, Steve, to explain to people why that matters? People are thinking, what do you mean it can shrink and still win elections? Gallup came out with a poll that said 25% of the American people identify as Republican, which is the lowest party ID since 2012. But there is how do you do this? Republicans control 26 state legislatures. they control a lot of what's happening at the state level. That's why we see what's going on with these voter suppression bills in some of these key swing states. Because we have the Electoral College, which I believe we still need, but because we have the Electoral College, you can still lose the popular vote and you can still lose in some of the, bigger places and win the presidency because of the way our system is. And Republicans have been very tactical about this for many election cycles. They recognize it because when people weren't paying attention during midterms or when they're not paying attention to their state legislature and state Senate races and things like that in off-year elections, they've been stacking these very important legislative roles. There were over 1,000 seats won by Republicans during the Obama administration. This putting certain, lifetime appointments on the court, the federal judiciary. Mitch McConnell recognized how important that was. That's why he put up with Donald Trump's BS, because these are lifetime appointments. So these are ways that when we say that there's still, even though Republicans and some of the crazier still might be in a minority, but they can be a very loud minority. And our system was built on empowering the minority groups. And I mean minority, not color, minority in numbers. That was the idea of all of this. So that the majority didn't just overrun things. So that's how that happens.
So let's set up what you just said, right? Apply it to the 22 election, right? So Rick, the Democrats have a 5-seat majority in the House?
Yep.
Right. So they have a majority. Thank God, right? That Nancy Pelosi became Speaker in 2018 to put a check on his worst impulses, right? But the Democrats don't really have a 5-seat majority because Republicans, because of the things that Tara just talked about, are going to pick up somewhere between 10 to 12 seats, which means for the purposes of counting who gets the next majority on election night, Republicans, without doing anything, are +5.
Yep.
Okay.
Just by the way the world
they're
works.
in the majority doing nothing, right? Every Democrat every Democrat who runs can win, right? They're down 5. So the other fact is there's only been 3 times in the last 120 years, in 1902, 1934, and 2002, where the incumbent president's party has picked up seats in the first midterm election. And so Republicans absolutely, right, can get back into power because though the number of people has declined and shrunk on the question of do you identify as a Republican because of the insanity, the reality is everyone else in the electorate just has to agree with them on one day. So, for example, if you go out and you are in a red district or a purple district and your opponent is talking about abolishing the police and abolishing jail and abolishing prison, and there's a case study for this, by the way. It's the movie Escape from New York, and it didn't look like a great place to live. But right, so people will cross over and be with them, and so the entire Trump political machine is fueled and powered by lies, by propagandists, by manipulations and racial demagoguery. Now, look at the stupidest part of Tucker's analogizing about the parents, right? Now, at some level, I guess it's ingenious communications because a lot of stupid people, and they are stupid, right? If that's the analogy that works on you, right, about the parents and the kids, because like what those kids should have done is call their grandparents. They didn't have grandparents, called the neighbors. But like, I think those parents need to be institutionalized, right? Adopting all those kids and giving them all the toys. But that has nothing to do with immigration policy, right? But that's the type of bullshit and idiocy, right, that Fox spews forth, poisoning the feeble minds of the Fox idiocracy, which is a threat to American democracy and justice and the rule of law. And that's what we're up against. So you have people that are liars, that are racist, that are very much part of the coalition now, right? And hypocrites.
Let's not forget that Tucker Carlson is a Swanson food heir. Okay. He's a trust fund kid bitching and complaining and whining about somebody replacing and disenfranchising him. He comes from that elite world. He's the country club Republican that looks down on those people that he's so worried about. Yeah, but he's claiming he's a man of the people though. He's all of a sudden Tucker Carlson is the face of populism now in America. Get the fuck out of here with Tucker Carlson and his bow ties. I can't.
No moment will ever make me happier on television than watching Tucker when Matt Gaetz says, "I was there at that dinner with your wife and that woman," and Tucker looked like he wanted to shit a brick.
Yeah. If he still wore those stupid bow ties, it would have flown right off of his neck. I mean, Tucker Carlson really needs to just shut up, because wasn't this the guy who made his career writing a whole love letter to Al Sharpton and why Sharpton was so important to the civil rights? And now look at this guy. I mean, it is the level of hypocrisy from these people is tough to bear on top of everything else that Steve just said, because it's so blatantly obvious to all of us. But, cultism is a hell of a drug. We have some tweets for you, Steve. So I know a lot of our viewers are eager to ask some questions. So let's get to some tweets. All right. From Kristen Warner. Do you think any of the Trump kids have any serious chance in politics?
Sure. They have
Rick?
money, name
Steve?
recognition. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They have money. They have name recognition. They have a fanatical cult of personality support base. Absolutely. I mean, it's like the question. It's like asking, did Kuzey and Uday have a future in Iraqi politics? Right?
Well, it didn't end so well for them. Next tweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see Don Jr. going out in a blaze of rocket fire like Uday and Kuzey.
He might go out in a blaze of something. Okay. Carolyn, do science and math matter? Steve, I know that's for you.
Yes. Profoundly.
Yes.
For hundreds of reasons. But, right, they matter because in the end, it's not based on opinion, it's based on fact. And there is a type of truth that is revealed through the fact of science and math. And we live in an era where truth is under constant assault by a vicious, sophisticated, broad, vast propaganda network in furtherance of this extremist anti-democratic movement. And so, yeah, of course it matters, right? When you have people like Mike Pence who believe that a gay kid ought to be subjected to religious conversion therapy, right? That's child abuse, right? When you look at the clear facts around climate change and refuse to deal with it, right? That is an abdication of responsibility and duty generationally, right? So truth, right, has to be at the core of politics and ideas in a democracy in order for the democracy to thrive. And so, we live in this age where up can be down and down can be up and red can be blue and blue can be red. And there have been other eras where that has been the case. And they all end very, very, very badly.
Our good friend of the show, Jennifer Murcia, who has written the book Demagogue for President, talks about this, about the importance of recognizing demagoguery and manipulating of the truth and those types of rhetorical tools that are used in communication to undermine truth, moral relativism, and all of that. And if you can't recognize that, if you're arguing with people that the sun is rising in the west and setting in the east, the other side wins. And that's what Donald Trump was trying to do, because there is no truth. What I believe, it doesn't matter what science says. It doesn't matter that for 25 years of your life, you believed that the sun rises in the east. Doesn't matter, and that is a very dangerous path to go down. And that's why Trump did it. Some people might think that he had no strategy whatsoever, but he recognized the importance of taking away truth, science, and fact. Because then you get what you get.
Right,
You get people
and we
like
have
on
a half a
Fox
million
News.
headstones. We have a 500,000 headstones in this country because of that.
Absolutely.
All of Trump, all politicians tell lies, right? And they tell lies basically of puffery because it's a really strange business. If any other person who didn't work in politics went out and talked about themselves the way a politician did, you'd be like, holy shit, they should be like locked up in an institution somewhere, right? Crazy,
Yeah.
right? So you're always a little closer. You are always a little bit more involved, right? Or, right, Bill Clinton, right? A lie to avoid embarrassment, right? I didn't have sexual relations. Trump's lies from hour fucking one were different. They were lies of authority that requires obedience, the submission of intellectual sovereignty, right? The demand that you look at the crowd size. B is smaller than A. But the leader said A is bigger than B. So therefore, A is bigger than B. That was a profoundly dangerous lie that Sean Spicer told, right?
Set
and
the
so
tone.
the conversation we're having tonight about what comes next, and because of the great failure of political journalism in America, is that they cover it like it's a reality show, right? That there's no causality, right?
Yeah.
That nothing that happened yesterday has anything to do with what's happening today. So the lie about the crowd size metastasized over 4 years and killed 500,000 people because
That's
of his lying about COVID.
It
that means
speaks
they'd have
to
to
that
take
DC
responsibility
culture.
for their role.
It
Go ahead,
speaks to
Rick.
that DC culture too, Steve, of, why is it that a mainstream journalist from, say, the New York Times would not say the words lying when Trump would go out and lie? Cecilia Bach, about 20 years ago, wrote a great book called Lying. It was called Moral Choice in Public and Private Life. And it was about political lies. And you read the ones in that time, and it's like you look back at the lies of Bill Clinton or Ronald Reagan or LBJ or any other president, and they're not even at scale. They're not even close to the things. And it was enabled in part, I think, by a DC journalistic culture that is not liberal or conservative, but that thrives on access and thrives on access journalism. So that's why you wouldn't see them say the word lie. That's why
For
you'll
like
see
2
journalists
years.
who won't. Right. That's
They
why you'll see
finally
journalists
started to
right
do it
now
because they had no
who
choice.
won't report on the people around Mitch McConnell who've made tens and hundreds of millions of dollars because they want access to Mitch McConnell, or the people around Donald Trump because they want access to Jason Miller. God knows who'd want access to Jason Miller. I mean, if you're going to have access to Jason Miller, like, bring alcohol wipes when you're done. But I mean, it's like that culture in DC is something the Lincoln Project, that's one of the reasons there's been a powerful reaction to us, I think. And we've talked about this some, Steve. So we're like an antibody in the system. We don't care. We're not about policy or ideology. We're about preserving the republic and a democratic republic that's survived until this moment without interruptions of the transfer of power, et cetera.
And one of the things we want to do, and I'm really excited about, we're going to do a better job of, on platforms like this, and others as an organization, communicate how all this works in Washington, plainly and simply. Like, we all are like multiple PhDs and understanding, right, how Washington works and how corrupt it all is, right? We understand it. And we're going to explain it to you, right? We're going to explain to you what toll booth lobbying firms are. We're going to explain to you how the biggest companies and special interests get access through the back door, not the front door. We're going to talk to you about access journalism. We're going to explain to you why so many people are protected by the journalists who should be covering them to afflict the powerful, but instead relate to them the way that a cop might to an informant, right? Giving them a license to steal so long as you inform, right? That's the leak culture in Washington. That's why there's so little stories written about the abomination that's Jason Miller, right? Who is Trump's top political aide. I mean, this is someone who poisoned a woman against her consent with an abortion pill. Someone who has admitted to constant illegal use of prostitutes. I mean, this guy's conduct, his behavior, he's a deadbeat dad, but it won't be covered, right? Because he's a source. Right? He's like Whitey Bulger in Boston, protected by the FBI all years, right? That's the same deal with Josh Holmes. And so we're gonna explain this. We're gonna
Steve,
talk
CNN
about
hired Jason. They hired him after all of that. They hired him after how he behaved during the election, but then once they found out about the whole abortion pill and all of that, they quietly let him go. But I used to have to sit on panels next to him during the first few months of the Trump presidency and listen to his BS. I mean, that was some of the most viral moments for me, which I take no pleasure in because I would much rather not have to argue with someone that's as moronic and dishonest as Jason Miller. And I also had the unfortunate experience of going to college with him at GW. So he's been like this most
good Lord.
as long as I've known him. But yeah,
I still contend that Jason Miller.
They fail up.
We're going to explain
Jason Miller
this.
looks like
One of the things we're going to do is we're going to do everything we can to cause chaos in the Republican coalition between Trump and McConnell. We're going to stoke the civil war between them. We have a lot of great stuff coming in the next couple of weeks. We're going to try to get them to start the circular firing squad. I don't think that they can stop it. At the end of the day, Donald Trump's either going to be Mitch McConnell's punk or not. That's the bottom line. You have the McConnell guys who all got rich off of Donald Trump on the Trump super PACs, now saying he's insane, saying that we're going to kick Trump out of the party. I think it's delusional on their part because Trump is in charge of the party, not them. But I think there's a tremendous chance that Mitch McConnell won't be the minority leader in the Senate by the time we get to the election.
That's
it's
what I
all
said.
Donald Trump. If Donald Trump makes a demand that says he's got to go, he's going to go. And
he's
I think
starting it. Steve, he's
demand.
starting it. That speech over the weekend at Mar-a-Lago was not by accident. Him coming out and calling McConnell a dumb son of a bitch and going after his wife and, trying to diminish Mitch McConnell. Yeah. This is not by accident. It's laying the foundation for that.
And so,
Trump is going to say, Rick Scott brought me a nice silver bowl. Maybe he should be the majority leader.
Oh, wait a minute. I think we have a picture of it. Rick Scott presented Donald Trump with this stupid ass National Republican Senatorial Committee Champion for Freedom Award. It's a made up award. They've never done this before. So they made up an award to stroke Trump's ego with the world's smallest bowl in Trump's hands here, in the world's smallest, teeny tiny hands of Donald Trump, to further ingratiate themselves to him. Let's make up an award for him. It's insane.
So put that picture back up for a second. Can you put that picture back up?
Yep.
This is a great picture we got here. All right. So what are we looking at here, right? And let's talk about JetBlue and AT&T for a second. Two companies. Rick Scott is the chairman of the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Donald Trump, we all know, incited murderous insurrection on January 6th. Rick Scott voted to throw out those millions of black votes, and his organization is the chief laundering arm of corporate money out to people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and the other members that voted to throw away millions of black votes and incited themselves the insurrection. So here we have Rick Scott, senator from Florida, giving a very tiny bowl to Donald Trump in celebration of, I suppose, his 4 years of political extremism and anti-democratic damage. A man who himself voted to throw out those millions of votes, who's expecting corporate America to write him hundreds of millions of dollars of checks. I mean, companies in America are going to have to make a choice. They're going to have to make a choice. And so Rick Scott is playing a game. He's up there in Washington telling Mitch, I got him handled. I gave him the little bowl. Mitch is saying good, good, right? And then he's going down there, right? And telling Trump, right? Like, we're all behind you. We're with you. But here's the thing, going back to the beginning of the conversation, and I literally, after 5 years, right? And I have to say, taking some time off was great. Away from social media, away from TV. I literally didn't turn on the television for 6 weeks. The amazing thing about all of this, right? Going back to the beginning of this show, is when you say, and the donors were eye rolling. The donors were eye rolling at Trump's speech. Remember this, right? I'm going to make an analogy to another leader, to another Führer, right? The eye rolling always occurred behind the Führer's back, not in front of him. And none of them have ever and would never roll their eyes at Donald Trump.
That's the
They
problem.
get down on their knees and bow to him before they'd eye roll him. He is their leader. He is in charge. And Lindsey Graham spoke the truth when he said, we have no chance of winning and taking back power without Trump. So there you go. The proposition has been put on the table, right? Let's put the people that Trump is with and worship Trump back in power. That is how we succeed in making sure that history defies itself, and that, in fact, Democrats, the pro-democracy party in the country, pick up seats in the first midterm. But it requires being clear and fearless in articulating the stakes and connecting the dots and understanding the danger. You know, I had an experience once in my life. I was in a house, it was a big house at a Christmas party, and that house at about 11 o'clock caught on fire and it burned to the ground. And there were hundreds of people in the house. And as the fire alarm started going off, as the smoke detector started, even as the sprinklers came on, I was amazed at watching people just stand around, looking around, oblivious to the danger, or maybe sensing that it couldn't happen to them. Everyone got out of the house and no one was hurt. But people don't particularly react to danger. They look away from it. We can't look away from this. Can't look away from January 6th. Can't look away from the vote. Can't look away from a Black woman who is a duly elected representative in the state of Georgia, who knocked on the governor's door seeking entrance so she could watch the governor of her state, with ill and malice intent, seek to restrict voting rights on the basis of a lie. She was manhandled, roughed up, and handcuffed and frog marched out of the Capitol. Don't look away from it. Stare at it. The idea that Trump is gone, that Trump's not a danger because he's not on Twitter, is delusional, naive, and it's going to result in a national tragedy. The bottom line is this: every election now is the most important election, because we are one election away from turning power to people who have no intention of ever turning it back over again.
That's true.
And
You already saw them do it. We already saw them go. Look at the lengths they went through to try to overturn the election. Donald Trump wanted them to go and take it to the Congress and use the state delegations to overturn the election, using an electoral trick to try to do this. Lynn Wood, that lunatic. There's a video out there I just saw before we came on air at the donor retreat. He was down there in Palm Beach talking to donors, about how this last election was stolen and how they're still going to take it from you. And they actually challenged him on this a little bit. They were like, it was Donald Trump who told people in Georgia not to go out and vote. He had a role in this vote, suppressing the votes, telling people to stay home and that it was rigged. And Lin Wood was arguing with her, no. Even if it was 500,000 votes, they would find 500,001 and still steal the election. And these donors were like, yeah, okay. But this is what they're pushing. They're still going to continue to lie and lie and lie to undermine institutions to get their way. And these people aren't going away. You would think that Lin Wood and Sidney Powell and these kooks that have been proven to be out there just making wild things up would be banned to Boogieville. But they're not. They're still being invited to donor events and on cruises with, conservative publications, and they're featured speakers at conferences, for God's sakes. They haven't been shunned. They've been embraced.
I mean, even though Trump didn't meet with Matt Gaetz this weekend, it was still like, it was still like the guy being invited to teach a Sunday school class unsupervised. It was kind of scary.
He let him speak at his property.
I want to
get
right? In a way, like, let's explicate that, right? So the story broke out, right, that Matt Gaetz was refused a meeting with Trump, right? So let's get inside that story, right? So who came out to say on the part of the Trump campaign there was no request and there was no meeting? It was the aforementioned Jason Miller. Why did Jason Miller go out and do it? Because they needed to make certain that it didn't get fucked up, right? That's why Miller had to go do that himself, right? Because Gaetz went nuts, right? And so what they did is a phone call, right? They talk. They probably talk every day. The idea that Trump and Gaetz aren't talking, bullshit.
Absurd.
It's not true.
Right.
I also want to say, as we've talked about some of the criticisms of Washington journalism, right, around Tucker Carlson specifically, and his rhetoric and saying this has nothing to do with race, right? And this is a singular failure. And this is another thing, right, that, on our platforms over the next 2 years, we're going to do a good job at and communicate to people and hopefully educate people. So let's take Tucker at his word for a second, right? I don't know, though, Tucker, right? I think it's really dangerous, right? But maybe you're just really worried about parents adopting kids and giving all the toys away and all that stuff. So how could we know? Is there a way is there any way that we could figure out how downrange Tucker Carlson's words are being received? Oh my God, we can. We can do that.
Why, yes.
Right? We can turn on the Google machine, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can go online and we can see how all the neo-Nazis are reacting to it.
They call him our guy.
They are happier than pigs in shit. This is the host of the biggest political show in the country is embracing neo-Nazi theory. And no one wants to talk about it.
That was my point about mainstreaming it.
Right.
This started, this I don't want to say started, but this was given like jet fuel when Trump, after Charlottesville, said, good people on both sides.
Right.
That is where I was done. I had friends that went to work on the campaign, and some that went and joined the administration, and some were going on air and still trying to defend Donald Trump in the beginning of his presidency because they were being loyal Republicans. I was never that person because I just could not sell my soul like that. So I didn't, and I would call a lot of them out, and I gave them some grace because I'm like, all right, not everyone is going to take a stand. There, a lot of people go with the path of least resistance. But after Charlottesville, when Trump came out and equivocated on neo-Nazis in Charlottesville and people chanting Jews will not replace us, and Heather Heyer being run over and killed, and neo-Nazis out there, with tiki torches, for goodness sakes, and said there are good people on both sides, that was it for me. I was done with anyone who supported Donald Trump. There was no gray area anymore at that point, and it just got progressively worse. But do you know what that did? That boosted that whole neo-Nazi contingent right there. The freaking president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, was pushing their bullshit.
they are now overtly, transparently, clearly part of this coalition. So
Yes.
the question isn't
No question.
what Lachlan Murdoch's going to do or what Tucker Carlson's going to do. They're fixed variables, right? The question is, right, are Hollywood directors going to do anything about it with working with News Corp? You saw what happened to Mel Gibson. This is much worse. Mel Gibson was drunk on the side of the Pacific Coast Highway talking to a cop. This is poisoning the minds of a generation of Americans. And it's going to get people killed. Again,
It already has.
in 1930s Germany, right, 0.75% of the population were the Jews. 6 million were killed, and another 5 million on top of that in the camps in a war that killed 100 million people. Right? The theories, again, right, the books, 1897, 1900. But over the next 20 years, these theories were mainstreamed. They found a political party to embrace them, and they ended in tragedy. Where do we think this is going? Do we really think that the plight of workers, and they're legitimate, we live in an age of profound transformation, of unsettlement? And by the way, there is a legitimate debate to be had about the levels of legal immigration in the United States.
Yes.
We have the
But we can't have it. We can't have that discussion, Steve.
I understand. Right? There's a legitimate discussion. This is not a legitimate discussion. This is a racist discussion. This is a vile ideological discussion. And we're going to pay a price as a country because this is out there and it's mainstreamed. It's deadly. And we have a choice. And corporate America has a choice.
That's
and
where I was about to
people are
go.
going to have to fight. You're going to have to fight back against this. You're going to have to participate.
I think it's important that people understand that this whole idea of cancel culture, that Republicans are using to distract, because corporate America is being called to the carpet. We do live in a capitalist society. We, as consumers, we choose which products and companies and things we want to use, and where we want to go and who we want to patronize. And Republicans are now making corporate America, they're now corporate America and businesses are the enemy now, right? Because they're calling them out for the voter suppression stuff and for the blatant racist undertone of these voter suppression bills. It's not about voter ID and trying to strengthen the voting, the ability to vote. I mean, that may be the case some places, but that's really not the problem here. Okay, we all know what's going on here. It's about suppression. And the fact that they continue to this drumbeat of cancel culture, it's to deflect away from what's actually going on. And when these corporations say, we're not funding you guys, we're not going to give political contributions to people who voted to disenfranchise millions of Black voters in this country, then it doesn't become about the fact that they're disenfranchising millions of Black voters. It's, those evil corporations that are trying to silence us. Like they become the victim.
Cancel culture is an excuse, not a reason.
That's exactly right.
We
actually have
tweet.
Before we do that, I think it's important to show kind of a mashup of all of the Republicans lately, and they're whining and crying about this whole cancel culture thing from Josh Hawley and the others. So it's even more infuriating when you see it all in one place. Let's roll that if we still have it.
The left tonight continuing to actively promote what we call cancel culture.
Think of the cancel culture, Sandra.
Voters already know it. They're living in fear of that these banks are going to cancel them, if these big corporations are going to cancel them.
Simon & Schuster said it would cancel publication of an upcoming book by Senator Hawley.
It cites his attempts to overturn results of the presidential election, as well as yesterday's violent riots at the Capitol.
Hawley fired back. I will fight this cancel culture with everything I have.
We have to take a step understand. What we're seeing here is woke capital. I'm not going to be canceled.
He's so canceled that he's on your television.
Nobody's robbing Josh Hawley of his First Amendment rights.
For a man who's being muzzled, he can't shut his damn mouth.
What happened to Josh Hawley isn't cancel culture, it's called consequences.
We are living in the renaissance of cancel culture.
This is a mind virus, and the only vaccine is unapologetic patriotism.
For a party that rails against cancel culture, they sure are canceling a lot of people.
And you can send Liz Cheney home.
Canceling Liz Cheney, canceling the Arizona Governor Doug Ducey. They also canceled Cindy McCain for not backing Trump.
Cancel culture is a real thing.
What I think you ought to do is boycott Apple. Maybe we should boycott Starbucks.
President Trump wants his supporters to boycott Goodyear tires.
I am not going to back down and bow down before the woke leftist mob.
That's why I got my this new social media platform. Every influencer, you're going to have a safe platform to come to. This Judeo-Christian platform we're going to have here, they go by biblical principles. Porn and swearing and everything. I said, absolutely not.
Well, I guess that means Trump's not going to be on that platform. I guess he's disqualified off the top. No porn, no swearing.
A car without gas is a big metal box. Doesn't go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
Their gas is grievance and victimization.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Hawley, Stanford University, Yale Law School, Oxford University, one of the singularly, and this is saying something, in a country of 350 million people. He, a United States Senator at age 38, is one of our greatest victims.
Yeah.
It's so tragic. I feel his pain every day.
This programming, this con, the victim culture, right? I remember deeply rooted. Rick and I would do this on another show, but I think that I looking at Prince Philip's funeral. I was born in 1970, which means that someone who was 20 on D-Day, fighting, was 46 years old. The values of that generation, from an ethic perspective, really, they're missed in the society, right? And we grew up in a culture, where those people, as a young man, has communicated a couple of things. One, nothing is for free. Two, you're expected to work hard. Three, no one owes you shit. I repeat, no one owes you shit, right? Ronald Reagan gave 100 speeches about personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. The entire program of the 1984 Republican Convention was attacking Democrats for being victims, right?
That's right.
They attacked victimization. I mean, all of these people are in some type of sick Olympics of who's the biggest victim. And I just at the end of the day, it's so fucking boring, so predictable. How can anyone sit there and watch it, right? It's what?
It's true. Can I just say something about this victimization bullshit? That was part of what converted my mom into becoming a Republican in the 80s. My mother grew up in the 50s and 60s, and she thought that she was a progressive. She thought that she was this big liberal, and then she was like, wait a minute, I'm not with this victimization stuff, because that was a lot of what they pushed. My mother was a single parent, had me at 21 years old, okay? She gave up a career in show business on Broadway. My mother was, about to be a big star. She was beautiful and decided to have me. And in 1975, at 21 years old, she was not going to be anybody's victim of any circumstance she was in. It was not easy for her. Believe me, my grandparents were not thrilled that my mother was having a baby at 21 years old, unmarried, with someone who didn't look like her. So it wasn't easy initially. But she raised me to say, never, ever allow anybody to make you a victim because you're a woman or a woman of color. And I went through my entire life never letting anybody victimize me. And, and I still feel like that to this day. That's part of my conservative value system is the personal responsibility because we lived through it. If that meant my mom had to be on welfare in the beginning, you know, for a little bit, but then she worked and worked and worked. She said, I'm never doing that again. I never want to have to ask for anything from the government or anything like that. I'm not going to be a victim. But she wasn't, and neither was I. My husband, who is a triplet from Brooklyn, New York, him and his brothers were in the foster care system in Brooklyn, New York in the 1970s, physically abused in foster care, then forcibly removed and put in an orphanage, okay, when they were 3 or 4 years old at the time. And they were there in an orphanage in Brooklyn, New York in the 70s. Not a great place to be in the system. And my husband remembers at 5 years old, a counselor telling him that he would either be dead or in jail by the time he was 30 as a young black man in this country. He was 5. My husband made the decision that he would, I'm sorry?
What's he do again?
I can't say. He's a federal law enforcement officer. But my husband, that was at 5 years old, okay? My husband made a decision at that age that he would never be a victim of his circumstance. And he very easily could have been. He could have whined and bitched and complained about how unfair this country is and how unfair it is to be a black man in America. And he was not handed anything. But he made the decision that he would not be a victim of a circumstance. And God bless his aunts for coming to rescue him and his brothers. And his aunt and uncle adopted them. And thankfully, he grew up. And at 30 years old, not only was he not dead or in jail, he was a very successful federal law enforcement officer. He just passed 20 years doing what he's done. He's been around the world 3 times. So it's a choice. It's a choice whether you want to be a victim. So listening to Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump and all of these very privileged white men in America bitch and whine about being victims is one of the most infuriating, laughably ridiculous things I've ever heard. And I think that we need to continue to call them out for how obnoxious and absurd it is.
It is Rupert Murdoch and Roger Ailes' most amazing propaganda achievement. How they have convinced tens of millions of, and it is white America, right? Upper middle class, affluent white America, that they are victims. That they're victims, right? That they have, that not only that they are victims, but there is virtue in their victimhood and their shared victimhood. A great white community of aggrieved victims led by, you know, the Matt Gaetzes of the world, right?
Yeah,
and
another one.
You know,
that's all right. Another
so
one.
sad
Add
he
it
was
to the
forced
list.
to.
Yeah. Again, another one who comes from privilege, claiming that he's a victim. It's a nonsense. And this is, you know, we live in still, despite the sins of this country, we still live in the greatest country in the world with the most access to freedom. And all of that goes away if we allow the ideology of Trumpism, the malignancy of Trumpism, which is what I call it, to further Steve's analogy about metastasizing cancers. We cannot allow this to continue to spread. That's why we're here. That's why the Lincoln Project exists and continues to. And that's why I think so many people are attracted to what we're doing, and we're appreciative of all the supporters of the Lincoln Project and what we're doing and continue to do. As we wrap this up, Steve Schmidt, we are going to give you one last word, and then we are going to say good night, because we have given an added 30-minute bonus to our viewers tonight, specifically for you, Steve Schmidt, because everyone loves and misses you. And we want to make sure that you get the final word.
Well, I just, you know, one of the strangest experiences of my life is I had a client once who said, why don't we go on a walk on the beach and share our vulnerabilities and feelings with each other? And, you know, I've always described that as the closest I've come to meeting a Martian. And I truly didn't know what to do. And, you know, I revealed some about myself pretty recently, you know, on social media, and talked about the fact that after a long time fighting Trump, that I needed a little bit of a break from it at all, and was just overwhelmed by the amount of good wishes and goodwill for the organization. You know, for me personally, And I just want to thank, so I know some people watching tonight did that. And, I just want to thank you. It's we're in a tough business, and it can be brutal. And the Lincoln Project has had a tough couple of months at times. And we're going to be in this fight. We're going to be back fully operational in our attacks on the extremist anti-democratic movement. We have some exciting stuff happening in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to be on offense, and we're going to take the fight to people who deserve to have the fight taken to them. And thank you for watching. Thank you to Tara and Rick for having me tonight, and it's good to see all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.
You're quite welcome, Steve Schmidt, and you're welcome back with us anytime, of course. And we were glad to have you tonight as well. Takes a lot of the pressure off of us. You gave us a night off, Steve. you drove the show tonight. We appreciate it. We can use the rest. No, I'm just kidding. Steve Schmidt, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, thank you to our viewers for joining us. Don't forget to follow us at LPTV. Don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. And last week, I was a little loopy from my vaccine and said, yeah, we'll see you on Thursday. It was already Thursday. I'm back now. I'm okay. I'm good. It's Tuesday. We will actually see you this Thursday. Don't forget to watch We're Speaking tomorrow night with Maya and Lisa. And they have a special guest, former Representative Katie Hill. It's going to be an interesting conversation. So check that out tomorrow at 9 o'clock right here on LPTV. We'll see you guys Thursday. Thanks. Good night.
When the citizens say, oh, gee, Delta, before we get on your plane, recognizing that you ain't say crap about this law in Georgia that disenfranchises the entire Atlanta area where your planes take off, what's your position? Just so we know before we get on your plane. You mean to tell me a corporation's not going to pay attention to that? Who are they going to listen to? McConnell or 100,000 people who decide we're no longer going to fly Delta?
Hi, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. For months, my free speech and yours have been under attack, all for telling the God's honest truth about Hugo Chavez election machines. There isn't a platform I haven't been booted from for this truth. Twitter, booted. Facebook, booted. Club Penguin, you better believe I was booted. I spent a lot of sleepless nights tossing and turning in a MyPillow canyon of my own making in my California king bed. What platform was I gonna get booted from next? America? Not if Mike Lindell had anything to say about it. Unfortunately, I did. That's why one night, drenched in a cold sweat at 5 a.m., I invented my platform. The only safe space on the internet for my ideas. My platform is guaranteed the only social media platform that was sketched out on a napkin on my bedside table and then given to my neighbor's kid to build. On my platform, you're gonna see a lot of ideas and have a lot of experiences that have not been vetted by me or anyone else. So you know they've gotta be good. And the security is out of this world. Just look at these features. Username, passwords, log in, log off, and many more. My platform has been described as the MyPillow of platforms. I couldn't have said it better myself, and then I did. But don't take this guy's word for it. Here's some other guys. My platform has been a real lifesaver. If I didn't have this place to get this stuff off my chest, something real bad might happen. Mikey L., Chicago, Illinois. My platform is the only space on the internet where I can get information about the Venezuelan voting machines that changed the winner of the presidential contest, but sneakily left the down ballot races untouched. Michael L., Cheddar Cheese Valley, Wisconsin. I use my platform more often than I talk to my children. Mike L., Meth Factory, Minnesota. You've trusted my pillow with your head. Now trust my platform with everything else inside it. My platform, coming soon on CD-ROM to your desktop computer.
Lock them all up.
Donald Trump has been inciting audiences for decades.
When you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
Now, for the first time, all of his hits have been collected in one place.
It's a rigged election. It's the only way we're going to lose.
Donco Records presents the inspirational favorites of Donald J. Trump. 45 hits from 45 himself.
We're rounding the turn, and we are coming around. It's going away anyway. We're rounding that curve.
With unforgettable favorites like...
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything. I can't release tax returns when there's an audit.
They're under audit. They have been for a long time. We're under audit. Under audit. You'll see it as soon as it's finished.
Get Donald J. Trump's race baiting on 12 CDRs, 45 records, or 128 singles.
Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. I'm the least racist person in this room.
You'll cherish this corpus of babbling rage forever.
COVID, 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 COVID.
But wait, there's more. Order now and you'll receive Donald Trump Sings the Songs of Love. Absolutely free as our gift to you.
Just received a beautiful letter from Kim Jong-un, and then we fell in love. Okay? No, really. I'll kiss the guys and the beautiful women and the suburban women. Will you please like me?
So please, call now for Donald Trump's inspirational favorites. Or send $45.98 for 12 CDRs in cracked slimline cases. To order, call 201-305-9163. That's 201-305-9163.
Hey guys, hope you're doing well. Just watching my algorithms get crushed. I guess I did something to piss off the Instagram gods, so hopefully you're seeing this stuff anyway. We'll do what we can. Talk to you soon.